Great to hear here because he's benefited from it. But basically, the pre-underwrite approval is something that we do that I feel like is unique to us. I can't speak for other lenders in town, but not many people, I think, do it. And what that means is, when you hear people talk about get pre-qualified or pre-approved, or I've been pre-qualified, I've been pre-approved, what that typically means, just to break that down, is a pre-qual means somebody calls me up, they basically tell me what their income is. I'm sitting there, shorthand calculator, trying to figure it up. We kind of, spitball some debts on what they think their, credit card payments are, stuff like that. And then a pre-approval takes it a step further. I'd actually get them to do an application, and I can pull credit, and I can do the same thing, but now I have their credit scores, and I have their real debts in case they're a little different than what they verbally told me, which 95% of the time they're never the same as what they verbally tell you. And also there'll be things on the credit that might pop up they may not know about, like a medical collection or something that was out there that may or may not be hurting them, but just something they didn't even know about. And so it's nice to give them information on that. But doing the pre-underwrite approval, essentially for us, and probably the most important thing about the pre-underwrite approval is to do it early as possible. Because when folks start talking about they want to do something, inevitably what happens to us is we want to do the pre-underwrite approval, but the time to do it is not like Tuesday before you're going out on, Friday or Saturday to look at property, and you might write an offer because they're that gung-ho to go. Because the pre-underwrite approval basically means we're going to do the application, pull the credit, we're going to go ahead and gather all their documents in, W-2s, pay stubs, tax returns, whatever we might need based on their circumstances. And then we're going to actually disclose the loan. So what that means is we're going to send documents out, but we're not going to put a property address in. We're just going to put TBD, okay? And so that means that basically now we've disclosed, which means they've signed some critical documents that give us permission to do things like underwrite and whatnot. And so we'll go ahead and submit the file just like a real deal, okay? And so the loan's going to be completely underwritten and hopefully approved, and then we'll get conditions. We can even work those conditions. So if there's a condition for, say, what's this large deposit on your bank statement? And they say, oh, that was a birthday gift from my parents, it's $1,000. Okay, can you just write a quick explanation letter for that? Okay, thank you. So we go ahead and get all these little, quirky gremlins taken care of. So now they're basically approved, and when we do the pre-underwrite approval, we typically will try to, if we can, we try to pad it and take it up to a little higher than what they think they're going to spend, or maybe a little bit more than what they say they want to spend on a monthly payment, because if they can get approved for it. Just because that gives y'all wiggle room in case, we get in one of these contracts where they want to be at $350, but lo and behold, we're at $359 because, the price got run up by competing offers. So that's kind of how we do it. And so then what's the huge benefit to that, which has helped out, several agents here, Worrell, you've benefited from it, is that now when you go make an offer, some of the things you can do that are, I think, going to make you heads and shoulders above the competition that might be making an offer as well, is you could potentially go in without a finance contingency. You could also shorten up your appraisal contingency, because now that we've disclosed the file, there's a lot of stuff we've done from a compliance standpoint that allows us to do other things. So as soon as we have a contract, I can get an appraisal ordered quicker, which means I can get it back quicker. So you don't need 21 days. Maybe you can do 14 or even 10. Worrell and I had one where he did a 10-day due diligence, right? And then we got the appraisal done inside the due diligence. So he didn't do a finance, and I don't think we did an appraisal. And so that worked out in that circumstance, And appraisals we can get back pretty quick, and if we have to, we could rush them, okay? But anyway, so that's one piece of it. But then also when, people talk about cash offers, cash offers, the fastest you'll see a cash deal close typically is they'll still write the contract to close in 3 weeks. But I can close in 3 weeks if I've already got my loan approved. I mean, typically, unless there's something unique or quirky, which of course one of the three of us would share with you, like, hey, like I've got one right now, for example, the borrower's from Brazil. She has a bank statement there. She's pulling some money from there. Well, the bank statement is in Portuguese. We have to get that translated. So asking all these questions up front, we did a pre-underwrite, we got her approved. So because we did that, we knew we had this situation. So when the agent's writing the offer, I'm like, hey, we probably can close it in 3 weeks, but let's write it for, and I know this isn't in the contract anymore, right? But to put on or before a date. So that way, and maybe make the listing agent aware, like we would like to close in 3 weeks, but we're gonna write it for 30 and say on or before. That way we don't have to go back and write amendments for closing date changes and just move it up a week if we can. And we're doing that in that case just because it was I have no way of knowing how long it's going to take me. We have a third-party service that does translations for all different languages, but I don't know specifically on Portuguese if that's a tough one that might take longer than normal. So, again, doing the pre-underwrite in that case allowed us to uncover that piece, as opposed to have just coming in as a pre-approval and then we turn it in to get it underwritten and then we find out some of her money's coming from an offshore bank statement. She's also using some pension money because she used to have a job in Brazil. She gets pension and there's a letter for that and that has to also be translated. So that's a really good example of why doing the pre-underwrite is just huge. But going back to the one that Worrell and I had, we were competing against a cash offer and we won the deal. Because as y'all know, cash offers are trying to lowball. They're like, hey, we're cash, we should get a break, right? So they took our offer because I think we were similar, but maybe not. I don't know how much difference the cash offer was. I guess we never will find that out, right?
Yeah, we didn't know for sure.
Yeah, but we figured that probably they took us because ours was a little higher because we were closer to the, price that they wanted to get. So, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. Do you all have any questions for me on how that works or why we do that, or if that makes sense?
The date, you said, well, we have to put a date for closing. You said you can do it better.
Yeah. Well, when you write an offer, if you had done a pre-underwrite, typically 30 days is fine, and we can usually close in 21 if we need to. But on a pre-underwrite, we've done a lot of the work, so we could maybe even close sooner than 21 days. And so what I'm starting to do is have people write into their contracts, because the contract doesn't have a default in there, right? You just put a specific date. But it used to say, a long time ago, it used to say, I think, on or before. Now I'm saying, hey, why don't y'all put that in your contract, just to save going back and having to do, because don't you have to do amendment to change the price? Yeah, so, I think that's just a good proactive way to do your contracts if you're in a situation where we maybe pre-underwrote the file and we could move a little quicker. Like the one that I'm dealing with, again, the Brazil client, they'd like to do it quicker, but I said, okay, let's just write it for 30 because that's the unknown, is how long it's going to take me to get this translation done. And that's something that we'll do. We'll pay to have that translation done. We didn't do that immediately because we weren't under contract, and it's not cheap to have it translated, and we pay for it, so we want to make sure it's going to happen. So a deal's going to happen before we just go translate in a bank statement, because if too much time goes by, we'd have to get an updated bank statement, and then we'd have to get that one translated. So that's why we, yep.
How long would it be good for? Like if we had somebody.
Yeah, good question. Sorry I didn't say that. So when we pull credit on a pre-approval or anything, when we pull credit is good for 120 days from the date I pull it. So typically, when the underwriter underwrites the file, let's just say that for whatever reason we pull credit, we talk about stuff for a while, then the borrower finally says, okay, let's do the pre-underwrite, and then we get it submitted, and then she underwrites it. When she underwrites it, she's going to look at how much time is left on that 120 day, and then she's going to say my approval is good for the whatever the credit report's good for. And that's not a big deal, because typically,
Close in the 120 days, or just?
No, I'm saying your pre-underwrite's good for that, right? And they're going to re-underwrite the file once a real deal comes in, because let's say we wrote it for $350 and they end up buying it for $345. Technically, the underwriter's going to go back and relook at everything, and obviously she's going to review the appraisal when it comes in. But the actual approval itself, or pre-underwrite approval that she did, just would hang out there for that balance of whatever the however long you got left on your credit report pull date that you did. So it's a pretty good window, and that's again why it's never too early for us to get started with them. But what becomes complicated is I want you guys to be able to write offers without finance contingencies, because we know it works and it helps a lot, and to close quicker and everything. But if I don't get them to do their pre-underwrite until like that week before you're going out, and then all of a sudden now you're writing an offer, well, if you're going to write an offer, we might as well just wait and submit the real offer at that point, because Right now, pre-underwrites take from the time they underwrite, from the time they sign the disclosures, it's probably about 4 to 5 business days. So, that's about, we'll just call it a week, a business week. So, which is not too long, and that's because they don't rush them through the system because they're not real deals, and they've obviously got other files they're underwriting that are real contracts. So they do these pre-underwrites and they're happy to do them, but they don't put them ahead. They won't rush one ahead of a live deal, So yeah, but any other
This is standard with you, the pre-underwriting?
standard? Yeah, well, I mean, it's standard from the standpoint that we would like to do them on any deal that we can. But like I said, circumstantially, like sometimes we just don't get the chance to do a pre-underwrite because people, either don't go to that next step or we don't have enough time. Like if, they were ready to go and, we don't, and you want to make an offer, you guys went out and you found a property. So that's why I say the sooner we can get them, the better, because, maybe when you first start talking to them and we get them, we get a chance to get the application in and we start talking about doing that pre-underwrite. If we can get your buy-in to it and also encourage them like, yes, again, maybe not everybody in this room has done a pre-underwrite yet, but I know a couple of you have, or a few of you have. And so just encouraging the borrowers to do this process because it costs them nothing. And I think it can make a huge difference for you when you go to make an offer, so yes.
I assume it's a hard credit pull though, right? So
It is a hard credit pull, that's correct.
On your side, do you talk them through kind of so that they know the impact of that? They're like, I'm ready to, I'm going.
Yeah.
I'm not just looking, or.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, again, when you guys send one over to us, you say, hey, I gave this person your name, or what's even better is if you give us their information and then we reach out to them. And I try, all of us might be a little bit different, but I mean, I try to do an intro email and copy you on it sometimes, or if you do that, like I know Royal will do that, he'll send an email to the client and he'll copy me introducing who I am. I reply all to that first email. Then I don't want to junk up his inbox with a bunch of other emails to him, but after that he sees I got the handoff. Now, all of you guys I think probably have the app, and so when I send them a link to do the application, and you might not because I think you're new, right? But so I'll make sure when we get done today that you get that. And maybe, do you have the app? I don't know if you have. Okay, so, but we'll send them the link. And when I'm sending them the app, I can tag you guys. So then you can see when, and I think, did you get it, Claire? Whenever, did you get, but you had a unique thing about the app, I think, right? Because you did it so early on, I think we did it, and it was kind of quirky.
I think so. You're still on there, but
Yeah.
whenever you sent anything to him, I wasn't.
Right, okay. I need to go take another look at that and see. I'll make sure. But we have little buttons in there I can turn stuff. You guys, trust me, you do not want to get an email every time they open the app or every time they send me a document. It's too much. It's too much for us sometimes, especially when they're sending it all at one time. I'll get 30 emails, in a day from the same person just because it's copying me every time they upload something. And so, but the app, when we send it, you would get tagged. I'd make sure you have the app with your profile and your bio and your pic, okay, and your logo for Century 21, and then you would get tagged so that you would at least know when they did the application. So if you send them to me and you don't see anything, and if it's working correct, because it works for you, right? Are you getting the copy? Okay. So, well, I know he gets copied whenever they do the application. So you kind of know, is this borrower, to your point, serious? Like how soon are they going to, do the application, or what kind of a timetable are we on? So that, and then you'll also get updated if they share the app, which could also benefit you because when you guys show up in the app, you show up first in the app, kind of from a marketing standpoint. So you're the partner. I mean, I'm your lender partner, but I'm below you. So they have the ability, like if they have a friend at work and they're like, yeah, I'm doing this app and it's sounding really good. Looks like I'm going to get approved, and they want to share it. You'll get on the radio buttons. What I've turned on are the ones if they share the app, if they do an application, and I think when they download the app or something like that. So just the bare minimum ones. I don't copy you guys on all the other stuff. So, but that's kind of cool too because then like, oh, they're sending me to somebody else, and I don't know what that looks like because I've not been on your side of it, but I would imagine you're getting something that tells you that so-and-so shared your app with, and they probably give you an email address of who it was.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. But anything else? Any other questions? I hope that's, I hope you guys will find that helpful. Doing as long as I've been doing it, we didn't always do this, but this kind of started before COVID happened, and I'm telling you, we've just had like a lot of success with it. Like it's a game changer. It's kind of a differentiator between us and somebody else. So if I can get them first, and if they're comfortable talking to us about doing their loan and they do that, chances are they're going to stick with the process, follow it through, and hopefully there's going to be a deal in there for both of us. Yep.
You mentioned soft pull earlier, and sometimes I get people who's like, oh, I don't want to mess up my credit, but I'm
Right.
like, you got to find out.
Right.
So how do you have the conversation between the soft and hard pull and how much it affects their credit?
Right. Well, here's how I respond to soft pulls. I mean, you can do a soft pull in our business. We have the option to do a soft pull. We don't do them because ultimately when you get ready to do a real deal, you have to convert it to a hard pull. And the soft pull will give you some information, but I can't even run the deal electronically, to get an approval with the soft pull. I can't submit it for a pre-underwrite with a soft pull. And so to me, you're having to have that conversation about pulling credit twice. And I would rather just talk to them. And that's another thing, are these people serious? Last thing you guys want to do is waste your time. And we don't want to waste your time. And we don't want to waste our time. So if you have that conversation up front, because, as far as dinging your credit, it might be a few points. And that's not going to show up for probably 30 or 45 days anyway in their scores. But when they do pull it, they do have the opportunity at that time to shop around for a mortgage, and the first guy that pulled it is going to be the one that dings the credit. That being said, so if someone says, well, I already got pre-approved, and you say, well, how long ago was that? And I'm shocked at how many people are like, oh, it was last year. I'm like, okay, well, that means nothing. And so, but sometimes they'll say, they just had it pulled the day before, or they did an online app somewhere else. We get this a lot with Rocket Mortgage. They'll go on to Rocket, they'll do the app. So I'll get in there and I'll pull my app. I see that Rocket pulled it the day before me or maybe 2 days before me. But the scores don't change every time somebody hits it. It's just that first time for a 30-day window. And then beyond that, if they wait and then go pull it again, well, then they could have another ding for a mortgage company pulling their credit. And while we're talking about credit, just so you know, we don't sell information. And I think I've said this before in the meetings, but since we're talking about pulling credit, there are these companies out there, I'll call them telemarketing companies, okay? And they are buying lists of anybody who has their credit pull for a mortgage. And I hate it, and I think it should be illegal. And there are people in the lobbying in the mortgage world that are trying to get legislators to make a change to this, because they are ruthless. They will call, you'll get, I've had people tell me they had no less than 30 calls. And it's not immediate, and there are I kind of play the game a little bit where I'll wait till after 5 o'clock sometimes. If I've got a client late in the afternoon, I'll wait till after 5, because they're not supposed to call people after 5. But that doesn't mean people don't do it, but they are not supposed to. Or on a weekend, if I get a credit pull on a weekend, somebody calls me and says, hey, can you pre-qualify this client? I'll try to go ahead and make sure I get somewhere where I can get that credit pulled that weekend, because they don't typically call on the weekends. It's supposed to be during the business hours. That doesn't mean on Monday these guys don't come into work and they're like, ooh, I got a list of 5 people over the weekend that, had their credit pulled for a mortgage. So all that is to say is that we don't sell their information, and we try to give people a heads up on it just so that they don't get, because they get a little irritated sometimes. They're like, what happened? Why am I, y'all selling my information? So it helps a lot when we tell them up front proactively, look, you might get calls, just ignore them, because they're just telemarketing type companies that are, you're dealing with a customer service rep on the phone, and their job is to just try to get you on the phone, and they're going to tell you anything you need to hear to get you to do an application or whatever. So, yeah.
I've had it to where it's I'd be with the client and the phone would just ring me off the hook, or we'd be on the phone and be I just got 3 calls.
Yeah. And so I just tell people, if you just block those calls, if you don't recognize the number, 95% chance it's one of those, people. And I mean, unfortunately, there's just really nothing we can do other than to make people aware that's what's happening. And it's the nature of our business, right? I mean, we're all out buying leads, right? So it's the nature of business is slow. And so when that happens, you get companies out there that have a lot of overhead and a lot of expenses. And so they'll buy the leads because they need people to bring in, deals no matter how. And I mean, obviously a good lead is someone who did check for credit, or in theory, even though sometimes people get their credit checked and they're not loanable, but you don't know that, so, but if your person's credit score is like a 750 or plus credit score, they're going to go after those guys. What's that?
They just call everybody that pulls their credit.
Yeah, I mean, if I was to buy those leads, I can like query, just like you guys could probably query, right, on the types of leads you want to get. But I could buy, like, I only want people in Georgia that have a 720 plus credit score. And that's what I'm paying for, and that's all I'm supposed to get, right? But when they're slow and business is slow, they open that up down to a little bit lower credit score. And I go to great lengths. I'll take their names. I can't take their names out. I take their emails out. I take their cell phone numbers out. And people say it doesn't matter. In my business, they're like, oh, it doesn't matter. That's not whatever. I don't believe them. I just take them out. Then I run the credit. Then I put them back in. So I'm not going to give them any information that will help them contact them, just because and again, these are hopefully going to be clients for us going forward. And I want to establish a good relationship with them, and I don't want them mad at me from day one because they think I sold their credit,
Well,
which we did.
two things on that. I dealt with another lender who sends an opt-out link to them.
Yes.
So they limit the chance. But the credit bureaus are the ones that are selling.
That's right. It's
not the-
Equifax. Yeah, it's Equifax, TransUnion, Experian that are selling the list, and you can opt out. And we've got some of those scripts as well where we can send them out to clients to say opt out. The problem is that it doesn't happen immediately, so you don't know you're going to get a lead. And if I tell them to go opt out beforehand, it's probably not going to take effect, and it could take up to 30 days for that to take effect. And so now you're talking about getting a client and you're telling them to wait 30 days before you, so it's not practical to do it that way. But once you pull their credit, you can send them that. And then we've got like I said, we've got several folks within the company that send those out automatically, and we can send them as well to just say, hey, once I've pulled your credit, I'm going to send you this link. And it directs them. They've got to go do some work. They got to go to this website, and they got to opt out or whatever, and eventually it will kick in. But it's not going to probably catch all those guys that are like, jumping on that call. If they're a 740 plus credit score, chances are they're going to get hammered with phone calls. It's just the nature of where we are with the business right now. It's slower. There's not a lot of deals out there, and people are desperate to buy deals. So, but anyway. Hopefully that was helpful. And if y'all have any questions or whatever, let me know. If you don't have the app, let me know. I want to make sure that you're set up correctly. I want to make sure I have your picture and your bio, because that's what your client would see when they open up the app when I send it to them. Hopefully we can get some more I know we've done it, Claire, and I've done one for Claire. I've done a couple for Royale, and they've turned into deals, right? So, and we did one for Atticus as well. We did, and we did a deal off of it. We closed a deal. Yeah. So, and I think same thing with hers. It helped her get her offer accepted to have it pre-underwritten and approved, and we didn't ask for finance. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. I'm here today for as long as I can be, and if y'all have any questions or whatever, pop by.